Welcome to the Holding Time podcast. Here we discuss breastfeeding in all its complexity, the ups and downs, the challenges, the triumphs. Whether you're expectant, a new mother, or simply interested, I hope you'll appreciate the incredible warrior women who are featured in this series.
So I'm Catherine and this is Sunny. And Sunny was 9 months at the weekend just gone. And I've got a 2-year-old daughter called Flo. And 18 months between them. So it's been a roller coaster.
So how was it for you in the beginning with Flo?
So before I had Flo, I was really laid back about feeding. I kind of had the impression of if it worked, it worked. If it didn't, it didn't. I wouldn't be fazed. I remember going to a breastfeeding talk, an NHS one once, and I'll never forget the sentence. They said, everyone can breastfeed, and if they say they can't, they're doing it wrong. So I had this immediate impression that breastfeeding would be so easy. No problems, and it'll be fine. She'll be born, and I'll just whip my boob out, and that'll be it. Unfortunately, during Flo's delivery, I lost a lot of blood, and straight away, she latched on fine, but feeding was really difficult. She was screaming and really uncomfortable, and it was quite distressing. The first weigh-in came, and she'd lost too much weight, and straight away we were told that I had to pump religiously, feed constantly, top her up, things like that. And they were going to come and weigh her again. And obviously they came and weighed her again and she lost a bit more. So immediately I was taken into hospital. There was no option. There was no talk. It was first time mum, straight away, in we go. Immediately I thought I'd done something wrong. Didn't understand what was going on. And then straight away someone started ploughing her with formula when we got there. Kept us in. And it was just horrific. Just basically pouring it straight into her, and I'll never forget that image of watching a student nurse literally just tipping it in. We were there for a few days, and it got to the point that she was being ploughed with so much formula. I had to feed her first, then she was given formula, then I had to pump at the same time every single 2 hours. So by the time I'd finished doing all this, I only had half an hour really to get my head down before I had to get her up for the next load. But even when she was full, we were told that they had to keep giving her the formula. So even when she was pulling away or she was spitting up, and I said she couldn't take anymore, people were coming in to carrying on pretty much force feed at this formula. It got to the point where she wasn't really responding. So she was born 8 pound 2.5. When they took her in, she was a week old, bang on 7 days. It got to the point that she was ploughed with so much formula that she wasn't responding anymore. She was hardly crying, hardly stirring. She just looked like a doll. And even the midwives at the time and the feeding team they had serious concerns about it. If I had the confidence as I had now, if it was a second baby, I would have turned around and gone, absolutely not. Because I already said this time, we will not be going back. We'll have a feeding plan at home and we'll offer formula if we need to, but there's no chance we're going to go and do that again. But first time mum, not even given the option, it was this or nothing. It mentally scarred me. I'll never forget watching what happened to her, thinking that it was for the best. And the anxiety of the weigh day pending, looming, however you want to say. Because it was literally like if we didn't get her to a certain weight, she wouldn't be allowed home. She was so unresponsive, really, that the midwives called someone higher to come in, like a paediatrician, I think it was, to come and see her. But as soon as he came down to see her, straight away he did some tests and he was like, yeah, we're not really happy with this. She's not looking as we'd like her to look. And then, so I said to him, should this have happened? And he said it's like an umbrella treatment. So if babies come in and they're underweight and they need to get their birth weight back up basically quickly, they do this pretty much the same thing all round. So Flo was just put on the same feeding plan that anyone else would have been put on. Even if she had enough and she was showing signs that she'd had enough, that's when they should have just cut it off really and not continue to try and force feed her. And even he said then, we just stop it now. And it was when he looked at her and it was his reaction, I thought, I'm not going mad here. But what would have happened if I hadn't raised it, if I hadn't heard, if the midwives had said, if the feeding team hadn't been behind me as well, like what would have happened if I hadn't been that type of person to say no. So I'll never forget, there was one midwife who was amazing, and she was one that kind of helped us with getting someone to come and observe. So she was amazing. There was another midwife that literally was like, no, this is her plan. This is the way it's got to be. Months after, I blamed myself, and, you know, we had to combi feed and things like that. And I was desperately trying to find out why I couldn't feed my baby the full amount. I'll never forget that sentence. If a woman can't breastfeed, she's simply doing it wrong. And I thought, why can't I do it? Like, I'd watch friends happily feed their babies, have all this milk supply, be able to pump, and, you know, I thought, why can't I provide the full amount for her? Why can't I do it? And in the end, I got to see a breastfeeding consultant who was amazing, and she read my notes, and straight away she said, you lost this much blood during delivery. Has no one ever told you that it can cap your supply? And I was like, no, no one ever told me that. But straight away I felt this instant release of there's nothing I could have done. And now obviously after a second baby, and I'm so grateful that I could feed her. I fed her till she was 10 months, and it's one of my biggest achievements. I just wish there was more support there at the time, more so from the hospital, because things like, you know, Qual and the breastfeeding consultant after were amazing. Could not thank them enough for the support they gave. But I needed that early support. I needed that, because what happened to Flo at the beginning, and watching your child go through that, I've not actually got past that ever. To the point that when I had my son, his birth was quite traumatic. In the end, he resulted in an emergency surgery that was done quite quickly to get him out. One of my concerns at the time was, oh my God, what if I lose so much blood again? What if I can't feed him? What if what happened to Flo happens again? I couldn't let another baby go through that. And that was one of my thoughts when I was getting rushed into theatre to get him out. It's so sad that in an already scary situation, my thoughts kind of went back there. It was traumatic. It was scarring. And like my son dropped a little bit of weight this time, but it's still within the guidelines. And I met some lovely midwives, and I told them about what I was worried about, and I literally was sobbing. I was like, please don't take him in. Please don't. I won't go back in. I'll do a plan at home, but I'm not going through that again. To the point that these lovely midwives, bless them, even before weigh day, were weighing him to try and get my anxiety down, because I was so scared. I was so worried of history repeating itself that, to be honest, I would have jumped straight to the combi feeding route anyway, just to avoid doing that all over again. If I'd have just had a different experience in the early stages, it would have just changed everything. My mental health was kind of a bit sabotaged after that. I developed postnatal depression after having my daughter. And again, I never really understood it, because before I had it, I just automatically assumed it was you couldn't connect with your baby. Like, I could not have felt a more strong connection, like a lioness, with my daughter. Couldn't believe it. I was like, I don't know, I've definitely not got it. But I also had this massive fear of something happening to her, things like that. So obviously it battered my mental health for ages, because I beat myself up about it. I couldn't feed my child. I was doing something wrong. I wasn't a good mum. I really, really punished myself massively. I felt like I'd let her down from the get-go, and I didn't know how to fix it. I think as well with my postnatal, it was a bit of a combination. So it was COVID was a big one, because obviously the isolation, and it was the feeding, and it was when Flo was born. Obviously she was born not breathing, so it was very scary. So it was kind of a bit of a trio of carnage. Because of all that, when I was feeding her, I felt safe. I felt like I was protecting her. She was protecting me. We had this bond that I can't even explain. And when I was feeding her and she'd go into a bit of a milk coma, I gave her in that moment what she needed. I was giving her antibodies as well. So with COVID, because obviously it was the beginning, wasn't it? I know it's still scary now. I'm not saying that it's not, but obviously it was the big fear, wasn't it? Lockdowns and this new virus, and you could see everywhere like breast milk had all these antibodies in. And in that moment, I was protecting her as much as I could protect her. She was safe because she was in my arms. But then at the same time, feeding her calmed me. Like feeding her reduced my anxiety. Feeding her, like that was my calm. It was our safe place, really. And I don't know, if someone said to me, stop, and it's like, why? Would you stop it if you had a safe place? It's the same when like people say, oh, you know, they'll sleep through the night once they start weaning, or they'll sleep through the night if you give your baby formula. And it's like, really? Because I can tell you now, it doesn't stop. But it's all these, I think, opinions come in thick and fast when you're a mum. I don't think you'll ever, in everyone's eyes, be doing the right thing. It did get to the point that I had to kind of defend why we were breastfeeding, and it really got my back up when people said, well, why don't you just stop? I think because we worked so hard to get to where we were, to carry it on. I never thought pre-kids that I'd feel this passionate about breastfeeding, ever. Even things like, you know, things that have been in our way, like mastitis or endless thrush, or it's so hard breastfeeding. It takes so much determination, doesn't it? And breastfeeding, pumping, everything involved, it's not easy. I honestly, before I had kids, I thought, oh, it's easy. What was a latch? I didn't even know there was a thing like to do with a latch. I didn't know there was issues with a latch. I thought they just locked on and that was it. No, tongue tie, what was tongue tie? Somebody had tongue tie, what's tongue tie? Like, none of this. I knew nothing. But then tables flipped. I'm so passionate about breastfeeding now, more so than ever. And any new mum that starts breastfeeding, I just want to help them. I just want to support them. I just want to do everything I can to, because it's lonely, isn't it? And it can be quite isolating, especially those first few weeks when it's sore and it's painful. And I feel protective over people who are having issues, because if they don't get that support, I don't want them to go through what I went through. So out of something so horrible, I feel like it's kind of created this drive to not want to see it happen to anyone else.
Thanks for listening, and thanks to everyone involved, our funders, Cheshire and Merseyside Women's Health and Maternity Programme, Arts Council England Lottery Awards for their support, along with all the amazing mothers and partners who have helped to make this project happen. You can find out more about the project by visiting holdingtime.org.